Glenn Rodman from the Wells Vehicle Electronics Technical Services Department.
And I'm Dave Miller, and we're here today to help solve some issues. We get a lot of calls with cam sensors and variable valve timing solenoids. So the first thing we want to do is kind of explain actually what those two parts are and some of the issues that we've been having on our tech line.
Okay, well, the camshaft position sensor basically monitors the position of the camshaft, while the variable valve timing solenoid helps to control the position of that camshaft. This component is somewhat new in technology. It's only on later model vehicles.
Yeah, I believe around 2002 is when they basically really started having quite a few engines out there with them on.
And what is the whole point of this?
Well, the whole point of it, as you can see here, this is just basically a solenoid. It's an oil control solenoid because inside the engines they have passageways, and this is built in line with it. And it controls the amount of oil going to a part called the phaser. And what the phaser actually does, it changes the valve timing on the engine. And being able to do that, the engineers came up with a lot of fancy ways that can increase your performance, help your mileage a lot, and now you'll notice on these later cars they don't have EGR valves anymore, because by changing the valve timing, they can get rid of the problem for NOx.
Able to meet emissions without an EGR valve?
There are a lot of issues with them though. We get a lot of calls. It's probably one of our more common problem issues, and especially a lot of confusion between the cam sensor and that and some of the other issues that go along with it. And what are some of those, Glenn?
Well, a lot of the calls we get are concerning camshaft related codes. And all of these codes, if it's a camshaft sensor related code, it will be a 3-digit code like the 340 P0 341, whereas if it's a variable valve timing solenoid issue, it will be a 2-digit code like the 0010 P0011. Those are performance related codes, not cam sensor codes. The problem that we're seeing with these variable valve timing solenoids is that the fine screen on that solenoid will tend to plug up with sludge over time.
Yeah, and the reason that is, people just aren't watching. It's always been a problem, and probably way more than ever. You got these real high mileage oil changes that, for whatever reason, the auto manufacturers tell you to do, and people just aren't really paying attention to checking their oil. And I get calls on these getting solenoid issues with just people aren't checking their oil, and they're only maybe down a half a quart, and that'll even be enough to cause it. And another thing, we get vehicles in that are getting older, so they're adding oil, they're not paying attention to what type of oil. Very critical to put in the manufacturer's recommended oil. If it says 5W20, you got to put 520 in it. And a way you can tell that is just look at your owner's manual, or even right on where you're putting the oil in. It'll tell you for sure what type of oil to put in there.
Yeah, that information will be available in the owner's manual, on the oil filler cap, and it should even be printed on the dipstick itself.
Mm-hmm.
And that is very critical that you put the correct weight of oil in that engine. A lot of the problems, like I say, that we are getting are solenoid related problems, and people are, because they are camshaft related, the cam sensor itself is being replaced mistakenly, and that's not resolving the problem.
You really need to pay attention to that code. And if you have any issues with that, we're all here to help you at TechLine, because we get a lot of codes. They'll have a P0 341, but they'll put a variable valve timing solenoid, or vice versa. And we're all here to help.
Yeah, and when a vehicle is misdiagnosed and the wrong part is installed and it doesn't resolve the problem, no one's happy.
No.
And so it's important that you do your research before you make your repairs. If you have any problems or questions, like Dave said, that's what we're here for. We're here to help you in any way we can. But bottom line is, the maintenance aspect is very important, more now so than ever.
And another issue that's very confusing, there's so many different engine modules out there. You got the 4 cylinders, the V8s, the V6s. The 4 cylinders usually at the most will have 2 variable valve timing solenoids and maybe 2 cam sensors. But you get into V8s and they're liable to have 4 variable valve timing solenoids, 4 cam sensors, 1 for each cam. So you got to find out which one you want to replace, and that relates to the diagnostic code. which again, you have to check on and
Yeah, every code is
specific.
yeah, component specific. It will tell you whether it's a circuit code or a performance code or things like that. And that's what you need to do first before you start replacing parts, is do your research and find out exactly where the problem lies.
And most of these sensors are fairly easy to get at. That varies from vehicle to vehicle, but it just depends on the make and model you have.
Yeah, we used to be able to determine which part was which simply by the electrical connector. The solenoids, for the most part, are just 2-wire components, whereas a cam sensor typically will have a 3-wire electrical connector on it. Now, that's not the case 100%. There's always an exception to that rule. But generally, the rule of thumb is the solenoid itself will only have 2 wires.
Right, because these will always have just 2 wires, because all they are is a solenoid that's moving a little plunge in there back and forth to let the oil through. So it's basically just 12 volts and a ground, which, by the way, is one way you can check these. You can even have these out. Put 12 volts and a ground on there, and you'll be able to see the plunger move inside.
To do a functional test,
Yeah.
sure. Well,
So-
I guess that about wraps it up for today. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Should cover everything that we kind of wanted to hit here as far as concerning these issues with these, and hopefully that helps you.
And once again, I'm Glenn from the Wells Vehicle Electronics Technical Services Department, and
I'm Dave.
and we hope to see you here again next time for CounterPoint Live.